What's up, guys? Welcome back to another reaction video for Dreamcatcher. Now, lately we've been on a tear with aespa, and we mean to continue that tear with SM Culture Universe episode 1 and 2, part 2 being on our Patreon. So if you want to see the full thing, head over to our Patreon as we drop that video. But we've been sorely lacking in Dreamcatcher content, and we return this week with Dreamcatcher with a new documentary video by LKTV and then some Korean letters. And it's called Dreamcatcher, a new turning point for K-pop. And this is something that we've been saying about Dreamcatcher for the longest time, you know, a new kind of path for K-pop, something that is a road less traveled for groups that want to be a more adult theme, a more darker theme, a more rocky theme, or not rocky, but a more rock theme.
Adrian.
But yeah, let's get started with this video and see what this documentary is all about.
New turning point. We did see some snippets of the girls kind of just being very emotional backstage, and you know, there was a certain point that they weren't really expecting it anymore because they didn't get the win, and then it was just a shock and a surprise. So I can't wait to see how this all leads up to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically, you know,
in the world of K-pop,
that's how it wins. That's how it
most conventionally accepted
played out.
Of success. For some girl groups, it takes as short as just a week to win after they debut, whereas for some, it takes 1,923 days. All throughout the history of this genre, there have been well-known turning points, situations where decisive change occurs which shapes how things play out for years to come. Groups like Girls' Generation, 21, Big Bang, BTS, and Blackpink debuting are just some of the instances of turning points which, in their own ways, shaped the course of K-pop, even still in the present day. Sometimes, these turning points define generations, and sometimes they set new precedents for future artists. Today,
it's insane
we'll talk
how
about a potentially much
these award
one,
shows,
but a critical turning point nonetheless,
have so much weight.
First win after 1,923 days. Now, before
1,
we jump into it, I just want to put a really quick disclaimer that this is all just a matter of personal opinion.
It's our opinion too,
these claims are subjective and not objective. At the end of the day, the best part about music is the varied interpretations and perspectives that come with it, and so remaining
admittedly, I don't know,
is paramount.
90% of the groups that are on display right here, like,
will be deleted from the comment section immediately.
No,
we're relatively new, and
with that
we
being
like our
said,
dark
we have a
genres,
fair bit to cover, starting
I think
with a
this
short
might be
recap
Red
of
Velvet.
Dreamcatcher's history up until this point. So with that being said, let's get straight into it. The story of Dreamcatcher starts just a little bit before 2017 with a group called Minx. Minx was a 5-member girl group which debuted
I'm so glad they switched
concepts. Entertainment, known for groups such as Dystopia and later D1s. It consisted of members Chiyu, Sua, Shion, Yuhyun, and Dami. Minx's concept was quite cute and bright, a popular sound at the time, but one that was
such
also
a different look for Dami.
In the same year, SM's new girl group Red Velvet made their debut, and the year after, in 2015, future girl group Titans G-Friend and Twice would debut with the same concept and sound as Minx, effectively eclipsing them immediately. After less than 2 years, while still only rookies, Minx were disbanded by Happy Face and was set to re-debut the following year with the promise of something K-pop had never seen before: a new alias, a new sound, and 2 new members. This would be the birth of Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatcher debuted on January 13th, 2017 with their first single titled Nightmare and its title track, Chase Me. The song consisted primarily of rock and metal elements, a sound which traditionally hasn't been mainstream in Korea, let alone K-pop, and understandably so, this wasn't exactly received with a fanfare in the streets. Not only were Dreamcatcher a brand new group from an almost unknown company, but they were essentially in uncharted territory as a female idol group with a horror and rock concept, and a strong one at that. For much of
this concept should be more popular.
The reception has been much the same as the debut track.
I'd love for them to go back.
Dreamcatcher's rock and metal influenced sound has always had trouble sticking and finding its way into the Korean general public's ears, but they've been literally promoted to the end of the earth,
I think
and along the way have gained
what they're doing today is
extremely
kind of bridging the gap between
fans. The first time that Dreamcatcher
it's still a darker theme.
would get their chance at recognition and success would be on
but there was such a heavy focus
on the 24th of September 2019. Here,
well, that was
they
like
would face up against the recently debuted Everglow and against Cube's up-and-coming girl group CLC. Everglow was the primary competition for Dreamcatcher on this show. Deja Vu was the candidate, and whilst it was
such a great one,
I can't believe that
it was still an extremely strong comeback. At the time, SBS had 3 different sets of scoring criteria by which they allocated points: song and album points,
Expert.
pre-voting
What does
plus
expert
reviews
mean?
plus expert scores, and real-time voting. Dreamcatcher won the pre-vote by over double, live voting, song and album points,
We're just gonna
leaving
email,
YouTube
the
views
show.
and expert
Could be
votes
just
in the middle
views, right?
category. They should not
I'm
have
gonna
won
email
the
the
middle
show
category and
as a
didn't,
K-pop
as Everglow's
expert.
total YouTube views were higher. However, based on the maths behind calculating points, as it's percentage-based, Dreamcatcher's score should have been higher than the 1,850 that they received, meaning that they got less marks than they should have. Even if Dreamcatcher scored nothing on the expert evaluation, which was 15% for this total score, they still would have had a score high enough to take out the win. So why did Deja Vu lose? Well, that's the question, and SBS didn't have an appropriate answer for it.
That's
With
crazy.
this, the group and fans lost their first chance in 2 years for their first win, when despite opinions on why they didn't get
so
it,
good in this.
mathematically, they should have. Now, recovering from this was sure to be
One
a
of the best
difficult
videos
task,
I've ever seen.
but the following comeback started to explode even more,
Thigh
with
gap. Or
Dreamcatcher
not thigh
becoming
gap,
a
the
more
thigh
commonly
stomp.
known around name internationally. In early 2020, they released their first full album titled Dystopia, The Tree of Language, and this marked the start of the Dystopia series, which would end a year later with Odd Eye in 2021. This album became their best-selling album to date, and was the first album to take them past 50,000 copies on Hunter, as well as being an album acclaimed by their fans as their best.
So good
In it
too.
contains sounds ranging from rock,
Damn, yeah,
metal,
no trip.
electronic pop, and
Gosh,
EDM,
shut the
among
frick-
other genres, and it served as a perfect showcase of the group's varied sound and versatility. In the same year, Dreamcatcher came back with Boca from the album titled Dystopia Lose Myself, and following the same trend, this album outsold its predecessor, selling almost 25,000 copies on the first day, 86,000 in the first month, and over 100,000
They just kept
copies
getting
in
better
total
and
on
better.
Kaon. In 2021, Dystopia, Road to Utopia, and its title Odd Eye would end the trilogy, breaking records yet again, and would crack almost 100,000 sales in the first month on Hunter. Across these 3 comebacks
100,000.
alone, the influx of fans and
good.
exposure started increasing radically internationally, as despite the COVID-19 pandemic, Dreamcatcher hosted an online concert practically every comeback. In Korea, the story was a little different, yet very gradually, reactions to Dreamcatcher on YouTube, Korean comments under the MVs, and also
Reactions.
just general chatter domestically started exponentially increasing with each comeback. The domestic voting presence was there, streaming was too, and Dreamcatcher were becoming highly competitive on all shows, especially towards the end of Odd Eye promotions. Despite all of this, by the time Odd Eye had finished up in early 2021, it had been 4 years and still no win for the members and fans, and 6 years with still no recognition for the original 5 members of Minx. Dreamcatcher went on to break their own personal best with their second comeback of 2021 titled Because, and this sound broke away from the Dystopia trilogy and most other titles before it. Despite this,
It
still
did
no
have,
win
like, a little
even
horror
after
thing,
1700
so they
days or
didn't
4
break
years
away from
it.
and 8 months. No one saw it at the time.
At least in the
but
concept
this
of the
comeback
music
would be the
videos.
secret layup, so to speak, the final attention drive before the dream title, Maison. For years, fans of Dreamcatcher have theorized over why it was that wins were unattainable. Was it the music? Was the industry against them? Was it comeback timing? Or were heavier promotions necessary? The comeback timing argument for many seemed to be a crutch, and Maison's comeback timing honestly couldn't have been any worse. Dreamcatcher were nominated against and stood toe-to-toe with artists like DKZ, a group looking for their own redemption arc with the hype to back it up. Onyu, not only a member of legendary group SHINee, but also well loved for his solo music. Chart killers IVE, who have 18 wins with 2 songs just 4 months
What?
after debut.
18
and the kings
wins.
of K-pop, Big Bang.
Big
with their
Bang.
first
Wow,
release in 5
yeah,
years,
that was the biggest
titled
one.
Still Life. Considering how prominent IVE and Big Bang's comebacks were at the time, to be wedged between these artists would have been the nightmare of those people who perpetuate that comeback timing was crucial to wins, but somehow, as they always have, Dreamcatcher managed. On the 20th of April 2022, during Show Champions airing, Dreamcatcher
might
seemed to
start
have the best chance of finally taking their first trophy, and fans all
You
around
should.
the world waited as anxiously as they did for Deja Vu's results on the show 3 years earlier. In an instant, 5 years of effort by the group and fans was realized with an incredibly emotional win. This would be their first, but not their last for this
this brings
promotional
back
period,
crying
with their
memories.
second win coming on the show on April 26th, an event which many have referred to as Deja Vu's Retribution. In the blink of an eye, just 2 wins, tears of happiness, and relief from thousands around the world later, both Dreamcatcher and the course of K-pop had been dramatically impacted. Now, of course, success is defined differently these days, and wins don't necessarily mean what they used to. 10 years ago, wins and the domestic
Wow.
recognition which came with them essentially was a lifeline which many K-pop groups and companies clung to, something which was almost indispensable to their longevity. Think of this as team sports, for example. Every artist out in the industry are strikers on the same football team trying to score goals. Positions on the team are limited, and those who underperform are likely to sit out on the bench or simply not play. For big companies with multiple groups, those who underperform might be shelved whilst others are given a chance, and for smaller companies with groups who don't make headway, they might not even show up to the match at all. Within K-pop, the most standard model was that wins equaled recognition, recognition meant higher sales, which meant more revenue for the company, and generally a longer lifespan for the group. If any of these factors were missing, it's very well possible that the group would go through a hard time, and even today, we still see groups sometimes disband due to financial hardship. In today's scene, though,
mesmerized.
the reality is actually quite different. The market is
They're all
now
so
astronomically
pretty.
bigger, revenue streams more diverse, and as the
We've seen a
industry has
couple of
evolved,
shows
so has
about
the way
like
that music is
trainees
disseminated.
and
YouTube, TikTok, and reality
there's
content
so many
is abundant
and
for
like
most
3
groups,
debut.
and
you
live
know?
concerts with online VODs are now the norm, allowing multiple avenues for fans to enter
eyes were
into a
crazy.
group besides the music, MVs, and general Korean variety. In today's climate, a win is much less likely to be
Sana.
correlated with the direct survival of
Twice.
a group, and as such could be considered by many to be unimportant. But the impact that a win can have on a group's mentality and the will to push on shouldn't be underestimated. That being said, beyond the principle of simply just winning, one of the biggest reasons that Dreamcatcher's win is so influential is the precedent that it sets for future K-pop artists. Since the inception of the genre, K-pop has not always been dominated just by the big three, and in the last 10 to 15 years, examples of groups succeeding under smaller companies have only risen both in scale and number. Some great examples of these groups would be Sister under
Luna.
Starship, Infinite under Woollim, G-Friend with Source Music, and most notably BTS, just to name a few. Each
Just
of
to
these
name a
artists
few, what
debuted
about
at different
Luna?
times
Because I'm
throughout
not very
history
familiar with
and have carved
Luna's
their way into
company
the Hall
either.
of Fame with stunning performances, loyal and dedicated
What is
fans,
it, All Art?
and their own signature
Yeah.
sounds.
Is it?
So how does Dreamcatcher differ?
I don't
They're
know.
from a
No, I
small
think All
company
Art is
too,
like Pixie
so they'd
or
surely
Yeah, I
be
think it's
likely to
Kiss.
join the ever-growing circle of groups bringing their small companies up to mid-tier players, right? Well, yes, but also no. Signature sounds are one thing, but Dreamcatchers is almost a completely different ballgame. Now, just to disclaim what I mean here, each of the aforementioned artists have been through their fair share of struggles, and existing as a group in the industry is far beyond easy. That being said, each of these groups debuted at different periods, in different generations, and with sounds which weren't too detached from the
What?
pop music genre
Love that
within
song.
Korea. Dreamcatcher, on the other hand, standing out as somewhat of a black sheep,
still love
debuted with a sound which essentially had no appeal to the general masses, and almost no correlation with the K-pop genre. Their task to simply even make it work was monstrous, and at times it seemed like Dreamcatcher and K-pop were just like mixing oil and water. Despite this, Dreamcatcher didn't transcend this issue, but rather built a bridge between K-pop and the rock and metal genres by taking advantage of one of K-pop's defining characteristics, genre mixing. In the process,
Yep.
they inadvertently wound up creating their own genre or signature sound, so much to the point that now rock or metal in K-pop is almost synonymous with Dreamcatcher,
Yes.
and they're often the standard to which songs or artists emerging with this sound are compared against. Now, for a small
course.
company group, to
Trail
not only achieve
Blazers.
success the way that Dreamcatcher did, but with the sound that they did too, is monumental. This in itself is an example, a beacon of sorts signaling to groups and companies of the future alike that with relentless promotion, a concerted effort, and also quality music, that almost anyone can make it. This alone is huge for the future of K-pop, as the bigger players only get even bigger, and mid-tier companies and groups shoot to the forefront of the scene once more. Leading by example, Dreamcatcher's success alone can and likely will usher in a
that's,
new era of artists who
Yes,
will
there we
continue to
go.
diversify the landscape
Purple
of the
Kiss?
Korean music industry. As we see this diversification of
Oh, there's
sounds and
Luna.
also groups occur under our noses, it's very likely as well that this event is a signpost
Oh, I
of
forgot what
sorts,
that one was.
a key indication
What
of
was
a
this
much
one?
larger macro change
Bandit.
occurring within K-pop,
Right?
one highlighting
Maybe.
the impact of globalization on the genre. Now, K-pop is an extremely dynamic genre which is constantly moving, changing tact and its tune,
Yeah, I believe this is
sometimes very
Bandit.
quickly and sometimes very
Bevindit.
slowly. One of the biggest shifts which has been occurring for almost a decade now though, is the spread of K-pop into the international sphere. This larger shift has been occurring incrementally for years, recently pushed by large groups such as BTS and Blackpink, but with all of Dreamcatcher's aforementioned circumstances considered, it can be argued that even if a group like Dreamcatcher with one of the most domestically unpopular genres can get a win, then the impact of international fans on K-pop is not only becoming stronger,
Yes.
but provided the music is quote-unquote good, and of course promoted properly,
Can't wait for the
anything can
concert.
succeed in the future. In a
Yeah,
way, this
2
also
weeks,
signals a
a week.
shift in the power dynamic within the
Oh my
Korean
goodness.
entertainment
July
industry.
17th.
Although maybe small right now, the landscape
That's
atop
right.
which
Coming up.
this competition takes place within the entertainment industry has diversified significantly in the last few years, making K-pop in 2022 almost comparable to the second-gen boom. Gone are
there
the
it
days
is.
where big three companies have the sole monopoly on the industry as they used to, and whilst they're still powerful, there are multiple challenges rising up, and there have been for quite some time.
This is spoiler.
This is not to say that big three groups have
Oh, wait, no,
won
there's
in
next
any way,
level.
though,
No,
as
yeah,
aespa
that's not a
rises to
spoiler.
heights that SM girl groups haven't seen before, and ITZY, Stray Kids, and NMIX are JYP Entertainment's hope for the
NMIX.
end of this generation and the next. YG still has their rumoured rookie group Baby Monsters in the basement, but if history repeats and has told us anything, it's that they will likely also be successful too. The argument here, rather, is that multiple players are rising up alongside the big three, and the best way to see
What
this
was
is
that?
as
Who
a
was that?
diversification of the market. Hype's chokehold on the industry is becoming more apparent by the month, especially with LE SSERAFIM about to debut, Starship have re-entered the game with IVE, Stacey with high up are big news to consider now,
How
and
many
now,
more?
so a Dreamcatcher. Now, a plethora of smaller and mid-tier sized companies are producing successful artists amidst the clash of the new 4th generation titans, and overall, the playing field is at times starting to look a little less predictable.
I just need
With
Ella
this
back.
diversification of players comes an increase in varied sounds, also allowing for the already wide net that K-pop casts to get even wider. Whilst Dreamcatcher may just be a notch on the larger belt of change, this is perhaps one of the most significant in recent times, and one which indicates the way in which K-pop is currently changing. It's still very early to tell exactly what the impact of Dreamcatcher's recognition within Korea means for the bigger picture, and this is all a matter
I still
of
feel like that
interpretation
imagery is
as well.
horror.
Some will
With that
consider
statue
this
turning into a
insignificant in the
skull
grand
and
scheme
then-
of things,
Yeah, you're right.
and others
And
will say that
Suwa
the scale
kind
of
of
this achievement
with
is
that-
purely
that
relegated
goat,
just to the Insomnia
Satan.
fandom. The thing is, though, is that throughout K-pop's history, we've seen artists single-handedly able to change the course of K-pop forever. And whilst Dreamcatcher may not be as prominent as, say, Girls' Generation, Big Bang, BTS, Blackpink, Twice, IZ*ONE, or many of the other iconic players, their 2 wins with Maison are a lighthouse for the future of K-pop,
IZ*ONE, I always
and
said
the axe that rests
IZone.
just over the horizon. Those
Whoops.
which aim to subvert the
Whoops.
norms, stay original, and of course, persist through the hardships of being a K-pop act at all costs.
I feel like more than a recap, it's kind of affirmation that Dreamcatcher has changed things, or at least made their mark on the K-pop industry with being able to pull out 2 wins in a genre that is the least popular in Korea.
Yeah.
And you know, of course, as it was saying, like the international crowd having more of an influence on what is popular in Korea.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we're doing our jobs. You know, we're part of that YouTube expert category.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if we are, but I believe so. There's just so much more international like fanfare when it comes to Dreamcatcher and all the other types of you know, smaller groups or smaller K-pop groups that don't really have that same following domestically in South Korea. But it goes to show Coachella, like there's so much more K-pop that comes out in Coachella.
I believe aespa was there. this
aespa was
year.
there, and oh man, I am just so excited because of this momentum now, this turning point. Dreamcatcher's gotta follow up with a comeback right away. That's what I'm hoping for.
I think it's prime time for a comeback for our favorite girls. But when it comes to fans like, you know, of Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande and the music scene from Western artists,
Sure.
then they're looking at what people in the West are also fans of. And if we're fans of Dreamcatcher and they have a
yes.
massive
That's right, that's
fan base across the ocean and around the world, then Korea themselves natively have to rethink what they view, how they view their genre, how they view the dark and the rock.
You know, it could be just a matter of perfect timing. You know, with their sound, it was so new and it was probably very jarring in the K-pop industry that they needed time to kind of permeate through the masses,
Yeah.
right? And finally, all of it just suddenly came together perfectly. Those were some big names that they went up against, and they won it. And
Yeah.
so, here.
Well, that'll do it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to turn on notifications. But yeah, as always, this is where we're watching this Sunday. We'll see you guys next time.